a minute. Donald. Schultz.
Hello, Meredith.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Donald and Paul, I wanted to let you in first. There are a few people coming in. So what will happen is I will start to admit them in. And then I will stop sharing my screen and you can begin, and then this will end about a half an hour later.
Okay, will you come on to end it, or how will the ending occur?
I will put a time in the chat when there's 5 minutes left, and then for the last minute, I'll just have my audio on, and I'll say, everybody, there's about 1 minute.
Mark's not joining?
So I'll turn off my audio and video now, and I will start letting everybody in.
Have we seen Mark yet?
Yeah, is Mark joining?
He's on his way.
Cool.
Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Good to see you.
Hello. Meredith. How are you all?
I'm doing great.
I'm good.
Doing well.
Long time for me. I don't know about you.
We're just going to wait for a few minutes, I think, to...
Yeah, we're going to begin in about 1 minute. I will kick everybody off in about 1 minute. We're still early.
Great.
Not quite there yet, Mark, but give me a couple more hours.
Purely for medicinal purposes, of course.
It's too early for that in the US. I'm sticking to seltzer.
It's so good. Yeah.
Cheers, though.
Yes, thank you.
Meredith, this is Jamie from BrightInsight. Do you know how many folks have registered for the session?
Hi, this is Meredith. There should be about 20 to 25 people.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Please do feel free to begin at any time as people continue to join.
All right, Don, you want to take it away? Looks like we're at 20 out of about 25, so.
Yeah, no problem. Well, welcome everybody to this section on embarking on your connected combination product journey. I'm Don Jones. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the Scripps Translational Research Institute in La Jolla, California. And it's a very good pleasure for me today to be here with you all, and specifically to have Mark Milton-Edwards from Teva with us and Paul Schultz from BrightInsight. Maybe I could ask Mark just to say a few words of introduction, and then we'll hand it over to Paul.
Thanks, Don. Good evening and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's evening here in the UK where I'm based. I've had a global role with Teva for 13 years, 16 years before that with AstraZeneca. I feel I'm a technologist, but have a real passion for patients, physicians, and payers. And maybe during our discussions, I'll get to explain what that's all about. Thanks for inviting me, Don.
Thanks, Mark. Paul?
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Schultz, Senior Director of Commercial Development for BrightInsight. I currently lead our strategic partnerships, including our partnership with Google, and then business development focusing in the US. And I've spent my entire career, over 12 years, in pharma, med tech, and digital health, including an entrepreneurial stint on the medical device side in the digital health space. And have been involved in, and currently involved in, a number of connected combination product programs across a number of different therapeutic areas and biopharma companies. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Thanks, Paul. Well, to kick it off, you've got a group here that is all very familiar with combination products that are connected in drug combinations here. It's not as new or revolutionary of a space as you might imagine. It's actually been worked on by a number of folks. So please, if you have any questions, you can use the chat function and send your questions in. We'll try and get to them and answer them. But in the meantime, Mark, you and I had a chance to meet, I think it was some 4 or 5 years ago now,
Yes.
at Teva. I was asked by the head of US Teva's operations to join the team you were on with Teva's global respiratory team that was embarking on a combination connected digital product. So maybe you can introduce the concept and what you were trying to achieve, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Don. Yes, gosh, time flies. That's one observation, or things always take longer than you imagine. That's the other. The concept was quite simple, really. That we knew patients have an extra hurdle in the inhaled area because they can't just swallow a pill. They're using an inhaler, and there's of course two aspects. There's in terms of adherence, often conscious non-adherence, somebody chooses not to take their medication, but there's also unconscious or failure due to technique. And with inhaled therapies, we have both of those aspects. So for some years, it's probably closer to a decade now, we've been trying to understand what technologies we could bring to bear. And the key challenge was that we shouldn't put any additional hurdle or friction in front of the patient. We're already dealing with people who often choose not to take their medications. So let's not put any hurdles in their way. And it's even a struggle we have today in the perspective that we have connected technology. How much should we even expect a patient to be using an app? It's not social media, you know. And I think you know where I'm going with that because we discussed it the other day. So there's some challenges there.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for introducing the product. So the product is a combination of phone software for your phone, hardware that holds the drug, and then in this case, a drug, although ultimately Teva chose to put 3 different drugs through the FDA process. So we're really talking about 3 different products, combination products that are using the same effective platform.
Correct, yes. And of course, it's some hardware, some software, it's cloud technology. We've also been busy in the years, I think, since we saw you, because we were able to do some prospective studies and look at an ability to, with machine learning, to predict major events such as an exacerbation or hospitalization. That's very exciting. We need to do a lot more. We've published that. But if you find the right technology, which I think can live with people, then they'll use it almost seamlessly. And you can learn an enormous amount, more than you ever would. I calculated it, I'm that boring. How many, what proportion of time does a patient really spend in front of a physician versus the rest of the time? And of course, it's 99.9% of the time they're not in front of a physician. So if we can grasp and understand some of that time, then we have a great opportunity to treat the whole patient and the way that they live and use their medications.
So Mark, you brought forward the idea of putting a negative pressure sensor in, which nobody had ever done before in the inhaled space in any commercial product, nor any add-on product in the inhaler space, of which there are a number of add-on products out there. Maybe you could comment on 2 things. One, did you have to overcome any internal resistance to doing something that had never been done before? And number 2, what is the hope and aspiration of the data that you hope to obtain over time from the negative pressure sensor beyond just understanding adherence?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Well, the first question is, yes, we did have to overcome internal resistance, way ahead of even considering the customer. Because of course, we're often animals that search for patterns and security. So on the suggestion that our inhalation variable might be valuable in the same way that exhalation had been known in the respiratory area for decades, the first thing somebody says to you is, well, that's not validated. And excuse my language, but that's a bloody stupid comment. Because of course it's not, it's new. And I still get it a couple of weeks or months ago, something else. You come up with a new idea and people's first comment is, well, that's not validated. And I don't know whether they're just, they're trying to get used to the issue or, but we're creatures of habit. So actually in that first challenge, we had to downplay some perspectives and find other ways, other reasons why people may want to do this new strange thing. And I have that again in a new idea we came up with a couple of months ago. You sometimes have to sell it, not for the obvious reason internally. That's one key aspect. And then the second point is, well, what do we hope to gain? I mentioned it already. We hope to prevent some of the major emotional and of course financial events for patients. And emotionally, being in a crisis, be that in respiratory, we call it an exacerbation. In other diseases, there's crises, and you want to avoid that, of course, for the emotional reasons and the financial. And if you can do that, then that's a much bigger value opportunity than sometimes the just treating for small percentage gains. That's some of the work we're looking at, which is exciting for us.
No, absolutely. Once you decided to go down this path, you were also looking at your drug portfolio, and you actually dipped into your non-brand, your generic portfolio. So this is an interesting story here, because you're actually now launching a branded solution using a generic drug with a new set of capabilities that enhance potentially not only the IP portfolio, but the value proposition to the physician and the patient. Tell me a little bit about that concept of reviving a generic into a new brand.
Well, I'd say some of it is, necessity is the mother of invention. And I'd spent decades with AstraZeneca, where, of course, the modus operandi was an enormous research, preclinical research. In Teva, we didn't have that. So by necessity, you sometimes have to innovate in different ways. We did have some great engineers and formulation experts, and that's what a generic company has. So some of it was out of necessity. Another perspective might be that if you're in a therapy area and you understand it for many decades, you'll realize that an established class is the law of innovation, is that you get small incremental benefits. So perhaps the route down pharmaceuticals in certain sectors is just getting small incremental benefits, and you're better to look for a different method of innovation. Now, if you give new understanding to how current therapies are being used, then it's a treatment use innovation. Part of our offering can be, you don't need to keep on using this type of medication. It's simply not working. The patient isn't taking it, or they can't take it due to technique. Therefore, try a different class of therapy. So it's trying to look for different areas of innovation and value. You mentioned value. You have to think where you can bring value, because if you can't bring value, you shouldn't even start your journey.
Thanks, Mark. Paul, you're familiar now with this journey that Teva went down. Does it sound familiar to some of the other conversations you're having with pharmaceutical companies around the world?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Mark and Teva are actually at the cutting edge of connected combination products, given where we're seeing other companies, and Mark really brought up a great point at the end there around value, right? Like you have to really understand what the true value is, and really understanding what the unmet needs you're solving for, as well as the business value for your company. We've seen on a couple occasions now, some of our current clients that had gone down the path of doing connected combination product and spending upwards of $50+ million, and literally on the week of launch they shut the program down because they started putting it in the hands of patients, and the patients were like, well, this is too complicated for me, and I'm okay with the status quo. So they skipped the critical step. And when you're doing that unmet needs discovery phase, which is a critical phase of anyone that's embarking on a connected combination product journey, it's not necessarily always about the initial unmet need. You have to think, and unmet need is not always adherence or exacerbation in the respiratory space. You have to figure out what those are. And sometimes the connected solution, the first version that you release, may not be solving for that problem. It's the data. You need to capture the data, because the data that you're capturing may actually create features and functionality and algorithms that solve for future problems for that particular patient population. So you always have to think about, what are the needs that you can solve for now? How can you get the data off the patient in a way that still ties into their daily lifestyle, while adding additional value? So that those are things that are critical in the initial phases to ensure success.
So Paul, why are pharmaceutical companies that are developing combination connected products coming to BrightInsight? What do you add into the value proposition? Yeah,
it's really about the data that you're capturing and the value of the data that you capture. So you can, it's pretty easy to just take the data off the device, store the data in a cloud, and then present it back to a clinician or a patient and let them make an interpretation of that data. That's a very basic use case. And we kind of consider that the first wave of connected drug delivery is, let's get the data, let's store it, let's analyze it. In traditional systems, which were called medical device data systems, we're able to accomplish that. But now you need to think about, what are other ways that we can add value to the patient beyond that simple use case? Can we take that data and aggregate it with data off a biometric? Can we take the data from an EMR and couple that data into some logic that may tell the patient that they missed their dose? Or can we tell the patient that, you know what, the device isn't working properly. You need to talk to your doctor because your device has some sort of malfunction. Or even better, you're a patient that's age 65 with these comorbidities and these contraindications. This is the specific dose that we want to give you. And by the way, based on what's happening in the real world, this is the dose based on some adaptive algorithm. Those complex use cases that potentially pose a risk to the patient are regulated use cases, as classified as software as a medical device. And so to be able to really go beyond that simple data ingestion transmission and look at higher value, higher adoption use cases that may present a risk to the patient, you have to put the connected product on a regulated platform. And so that's why we're seeing so much interest in our capabilities, is because we're the only regulated platform that allows you to support those types of use cases with a connected combination product.
Tell me a little bit about the regulatory aspect of the software and how the BrightInsight addresses not only the privacy and security, but the regulated submission of new software updates.
Yeah.
As we all know, we've got software updates occurring on phones, we've got software updates occurring on clouds, we've got software updates occurring on the key client software that's being built for the clinical purpose. We have different versions in different languages. We have different versions in different countries because of different privacy and security requirements. So I can imagine that any one pharma company might end up with hundreds of iterations of the same software for global distribution for a connected product. So how does what you do help them manage the complexity?
Yeah, absolutely. You covered a couple different topics there, so I'll try to walk through them. And this is actually the genesis for BrightInsight. The problem that we solve for, and our team is deeply passionate about this, actually came from a connected combination product example where Cal Patel, our CEO and co-founder, he actually looked to bring a connected combination product in a rheumatoid arthritis space to market. And they actually failed to get it approved because they tried to have the core digital system separate to the full filing. And so this is an area of deep passion because of the complexity that they had. They spent more time, money, and effort on trying to get the plumbing built from a privacy, security, and regulatory and quality perspective than they actually did getting product to market. And so that's really what we solve for, is from a privacy and security perspective, we have global certifications. So we're high trust 991, ISO 27001. So we have a robust list of third-party certifications to ensure the highest level of privacy and security. From a regulatory perspective, to your point, we're filed as a master file with the FDA. So like I mentioned, we're the only regulated digital health platform. So our design history file for the core components of BrightInsight actually sit as a master file. And so when we work with our clients, that combination product is being built on BrightInsight, and the end deliverable is essentially a design history file that we file. that design history file references our master file with the FDA, dramatically reducing their regulatory burden and accelerating their time to market for the core components of BrightInsight specific to that particular combination drug. So that's, and we take a same level of rigor globally. So we have what's called a EC certification in EMEA to launch CE marked SAMDs coupled with combination products, and also other global certifications. So what we do there is really take off that privacy, regulatory, and security burden so that our customers can focus on accelerating the time to market and getting the combination product in the hands of patients and providers, and then learning from that real world evidence generation. Now, your question around software updates and the complexities around doing this around multiple operating systems and device types and lifecycle management of your product and different countries and all the complexities there, that's something that BrightInsight has solved for. So we're not only a platform, but a trusted partner to help think through and accelerate you through those challenges. So when you think about specific countries, we have a platform that we basically couple that product, and then we're able to push one release out to all those different countries. And we do the constant maintenance of what those privacy and security regulations look like, so that we constantly adapt your particular product for those particular regions. So as the product is launched, and you're looking at lifecycle management, because the first version of what you launch, and Mark can talk to this as well, because I know that he's got a backlog of features and functionality that they're looking to release. You have to really continuously assess what's going to impact the intended use of that data, and so what's a feature that we can roll out on in an agile way without having to refile? What's a feature that's regulated? With those types of things on BrightInsight, those types of things are much more seamless and much more agile. But doing that in a regulated environment. So that's another key differentiator of what we provide to our clients.
Mark, if I could go back to you just for a moment and ask you, I know when Teva got started, BrightInsight's platform didn't exist. And you had some trials and tribulations trying to figure out how to build your back end. Something didn't go as well as hoped. I'm just wondering if you could add some comments on terms of, number one, how important the back end and how complex the back end has turned out to be.
Yeah, you got us on the weak point there. Absolutely, almost embarrassing. So we were years delayed, and it was up to our CEO level. I won't mention the partner that we had; that wouldn't be very gentlemanly. But we were years delayed. If you've got a connected device and you haven't got what people simplistically call the cloud in place, then you're not a connected device. So it's pretty fundamental to what you try to do so that you can get that big view I was talking about earlier and derive all that value. So it was very, very painful. It was life and death at some points for the whole project. Luckily, we had some very senior individuals who were brought in and invested into our vision. And if we hadn't had that, we wouldn't have reached the market. So indeed, now we... what's also surprising to me is, I kind of started as a team of two guys on this, that 8 years later, it takes an army. So, it's no minor investment internally and with the vendors you need, high quality vendors like Paul and his company and others. It absolutely takes an army. We believe that it's worth it, but indeed, almost every day I'm excited and nervous in the same breath. Because there's still the proof in the pudding. We're launched, we're seeing the momentum build, we see data every day as well, and that is incredibly rewarding. But we wouldn't see it if it wasn't for that incredible technology that in many occasions we all take for granted. I think in some ways we're pampered by the availability of technology, but when you have to build it yourself and build it to pharmaceutical standards, verification and validation, V&V, I never thought I would review so many thousands of V&V tests. But, when you have to go through that, then you understand that it's the basics.
So back to you, Paul, for a moment. As you've talked to clients that are either contemplating or actually have started down the road of developing the combination product, at what point are you discovering they're becoming to understand the complexity of this back end that they need, number one, and number two, as they start thinking about not a single product, but multiple products in their portfolio, ultimately, how does that impact their thinking about the platform and what they need in that platform?
Yeah, it's been pretty variable. So I gave that example of the client that failed with an entire program, right? Where they literally had everything ready to launch and they didn't do it. And then they did a rigorous process and now we're working with them on a variety of combination product opportunities. And then like Mark had said too, they had challenges as well. They had delays. And it's interesting as well to see, you know, pharma fails all the time with drugs, right? But for whatever reason in digital, it's this massive perceived failure. It's also this thing of like educating, you know, the investment in speed and agility to which you can fail fast and continue optimizing and learning is also an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I think a lot of it's happening in the earlier phases because what we're seeing as well is device teams have been around for quite some time within biopharma. So, you know, drug delivery is not new. You know, all the way back to syringes, right? So there's been device teams that have a ton of experience, that have a lot of relationships and a lot of rapport within the pharma company. Digital is new. So getting the device teams to understand the value and the complexity of digital is definitely a journey and an educational piece. And it does really start to, at least what we're seeing in 3 or 4 opportunities right now, or 3 or 4 different companies, is that coming to fruition as those two teams come together. And they start to understand with us in partnership those levels of complexities. It does take a lot of education. It's not an immediate understanding that they get this. It just takes them several layers to really understand that they can't go at it alone. That it really takes, you know, like Mark had said, a team of 2 to an army internally, but you can't just do it internally. You need to partner as well to be able to make this successful, because there is a huge investment in doing this compliantly and doing it at scale globally.
Yeah. Could I just add something that, you know, I mentioned the army, but, you know, you have to have some key generals or lieutenants, and we made some crucial hires. I sometimes wonder whether it was by luck rather than design, but we made some crucial hires. You need some key individuals who can navigate a new world. It's not a pharmaceutical world. You need some key individuals who, for instance, absolutely understands electronic design. We made some key hires. If you get those key hires right, then I think you've got a chance. You know who to reach out to in industries which juxtapose pharmaceuticals for this connected opportunity.
That's a good point, because we've actually seen the opposite of what Mark and his team have done as well. And whether or not which approach is successful, I think it's actually a good idea to in-house those capabilities. But we've seen companies that say, this is the device we want, but it's not connected. How do we connect this device? What is the design form factor? How do we get, you know, embedded Bluetooth? And then they try to figure that out externally, and whether or not that's a good decision, and the complexities and challenges with that as well. But there's a variety of methods that we're seeing in terms of how do we do this, and how do we do this well. And I think companies are starting to learn what the best practices are.
Yeah, I reflecting on Mark's comments, I learned how important the UI UX testing was early on. I got a panic phone call from one of the big 3 cardiac implant companies back in 2005. And they had just launched a product, a nightstand interrogation product that interrogated an implant, a cardiac implant, across from the nightstand to the bed, and then reported the information back to the parent company. And the product was failing in the field. They had $225 million invested, and they were about to pull the product. And ultimately, they did pull the product from the field, completely re-engineered it, and put it back and resubmitted it for regulation. And the question was, and they sent a team out to see me. And the interesting thing, and this goes to the heart of having people who are the key hires, was they completely overlooked the fact that the backhaul, the way you got information off of the nightstand device back to the parent company, was through something called POTS, plain old telephone service. And in 2005 in Europe and their target markets, only less than 50% of the market had a landline connection anymore. So in other words, the machine worked as designed, but there was nothing to plug it into half of the time. That was a very expensive mistake. It cost them years. It cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. It was basically because a UI UX factor was missed because they didn't have the right people who would have immediately recognized this was a design flaw in their offering. And so maybe Mark, you might just talk a little bit about what you guys did in the process to make sure that your UI UX was going to work.
Wow. What would I say? I mean, firstly, we know pharmaceuticals and delivery technology. So we had a bit of an insight. And I would say, actually, that just reminds me of a conversation I had with a very, very, very big computer company or data company who told me they were going to build a connected inhaler. And my comment to them was, well, good luck. You know, because you have to respect what you know, but also what you don't. And for us, we knew pharmaceuticals. And so that was the start. But when we come to those key hires to understand a new world, that's what we needed to do. We reached out to vendors, indeed, as Paul is highlighting it. You know, I don't know whether there's one particular model. I think you need some key hires to help you navigate when you need a vendor and when you should hire within, build a team. And it was only by knowing our specific area, and now, by the way, I get asked, oh, well, why don't you go and look in different therapy areas? Well, I don't know those areas as well. So we had to know an area really, 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 really well, and then recognize what we didn't know in terms of new capabilities, technologies, the new offering. And in that way, I think it comes to you. Also, the big army helps because, of course, then you don't make, let's say, technology errors or locality errors, something you're describing there with the POTS in Europe. You shouldn't make those if you have enough eyes and diversity in your team. So, you know, a diverse team, if you want to be globally successful, which probably many of these investments require, you know, if you're going to invest the sort of money that we're talking about, then you need to be able to leverage that across many territories. If you're going to do that, then you need a diverse team because they'll have diversity of understanding of obviously technology, but also reimbursement. The way we present this product in some territories does not suit others, and that's because of reimbursement models. So key hires, diversity, and actually it takes an army.
Paul, just we'll close with one comment from you. And as you look forward in the marketplace, what do you see doctors and patients when multiple connected therapeutics are being potentially used with a single patient from multiple manufacturers? What's the future hold for us when we're talking about the way medicine is actually practiced, where patients aren't given a single therapy, they're often given multiple therapies from multiple manufacturers and multiple sources?
Yeah, it's a good one. I know Meredith is calling time here. If I'll just be brief on this, which is right now there's a lot of individual projects happening. Right? That's the value prop that BrightInsight is trying to bring, is to have, where we're creating unique patient IDs that are, you know, and it's a fully novel and turnkey privacy infrastructure. And as payers look to do disease management across multiple products in the future, when IoT and connectivity are commonplace across all products, it's going to be critical to have a common infrastructure or plumbing, if you will, for these products, so that patients who are on many multiple therapies have the ability to provide their data access to payers. We don't want the EMR situation to happen with connected drug delivery, and so that's what BrightInsight's solving for.
Well, thank you, Paul. And Mark, thank you for joining us. I hope you all have gotten a little insight on the topic we had today. You've got two of the people that are deep involved in this space. So thank you very much for all attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.